I have often wondered when the distance first crept into my home. Perhaps it was always there, like a shadow, waiting for me to notice. My name is Daniel, and I have spent my life believing that discipline is love, that structure is care, that control is protection. I was wrong. I know that now. Emily, my eldest, is 16. She has always been different from me, curious, vibrant, unafraid to explore the world beyond these walls. I see myself in her sometimes, but only the parts I have buried, the parts I never allowed to bloom. My youngest, Ryan, is 12, sensitive, creative, quiet. He hides in books and stories, and though I try to understand him, I often fail. Our house is orderly, everything in its place, floors polished, furniture aligned, the air itself disciplined. Outsiders might call it a perfect home. I called it a home worth fighting for. But perfection has a price, and sometimes that price is silence, resentment, and walls between a father and his children. I remember one evening, Emily came home a few minutes late. I called her name, not with anger, but with firmness. "Emily." My voice echoed through the house. She appeared in the doorway, cheeks slightly flushed. I just lost track of time," she said. "Lost track of time?" I asked, each word deliberate. "You know the rules. Dinner is at 7, not 7:15, not 7:30, 7. "Yes, Father," she whispered. Ryan watched from the staircase, clutching his notebook. I could see the tension in his small frame. I didn't want to frighten them, yet I saw only carelessness, only mistakes where I had tried to teach lessons. That night, Emily retreated to her room with her sketchbook. Ryan sat beside his bed, writing quietly. And I, alone in the living room, stared at the empty chairs, feeling the invisible gap that had grown between us. I believed I was doing the right thing. I was providing, protecting, guiding. Yet I could feel, even then, that my presence was not enough, that my way of loving was perhaps too heavy. Morning came, and with it the familiar rhythm of our house. Breakfast was served on time, everything in place. I entered the kitchen expecting respect, expecting order. "Breakfast," I said, simply. "Yes, Father," they replied. But even as I heard the words, I felt the weight of distance. Emily doodled absent-mindedly in her sketchbook. Ryan shuffled, lost in his notebook. I noticed it immediately. Hidden worlds they were building without me. Later, I discovered it. Emily had entered an art competition without telling me. I didn't see it as creativity. I saw it as defiance, a step away from the discipline I believed would protect her future. Ryan's stories, his endless imaginary kingdoms, felt like distractions I could not permit. One afternoon, I held Ryan's notebook in my hands, his wide eyes fixed on me. "Why are you wasting time on this nonsense?" I asked. I like writing," he murmured. "Like writing? You like wasting time. Do you think dreams will pay your bills? Will they teach you discipline?" I felt a surge of frustration, a mix of fear and love I could not untangle. Emily watched from the doorway, her expression a storm of emotions. I wanted to yell, to make them understand, to bring them in line. But even then, I felt the tremor of doubt. Was I too strict? Was my love too heavy? My expectations too high? I remembered my own father, the man who had ruled my childhood with iron fists and cold words, the man who had loved through fear and expectation. And suddenly, in a flash of painful clarity, I saw the truth. I was repeating his mistakes. I only wanted to protect you, I whispered, voice cracking. I thought if I made you follow rules, life would be easier for you. Emily's eyes softened slightly, though still wary. Father, life is not easier when you can't breathe. Ryan stepped closer. We want to make you proud, but we also want to live our own lives. I sank into a chair, exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the weight of the realization. I had spent years enforcing rules, ensuring order, believing it was love. And all the while, I had been blind to what they truly needed: understanding, freedom, and trust. That night, they retreated to their rooms. I stayed in the living room, staring at the empty chairs, at the quiet house. For the first time, I felt the enormity of my failure. I had been a father in name, a disciplinarian in practice, but blind to the hearts of my own children. And yet, in that failure, there was a spark. I realized that change was possible. I realized that love could be different: gentle, patient, listening, understanding. I didn't know how to bridge the gap yet, but I knew I had to try, or risk losing them entirely. The breaking point had come. The walls had cracked, the silence had shattered, and the storm had raged. But in that storm, I glimpsed the first signs of redemption. I had to learn to listen, to let go of control, to let love guide me instead of fear. The next days would be the hardest. Emily avoided me, hiding in the corners of the house. Ryan barely spoke, clutching his notebook like a lifeline, writing stories I would never read. And I wandered through the house, feeling every creaking floorboard, every echo of silence, like a judgment. I tried to speak. I tried to ask them how they felt, to apologize, to bridge the distance I had created. But every attempt was met with hesitation, with polite deflection, with a wall of caution I could not yet tear down. I realized something crucial. Apologies alone would not heal this. I needed to understand them, not just speak to them. One evening, I found myself standing in Emily's doorway, watching her sketch quietly. The lines on the page were alive, vibrant, full of emotion I could barely comprehend. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I simply watched. And in that moment, I understood something I had never truly grasped. This was her world, and it was beautiful. My rules had tried to cage it, and in doing so, I had dimmed it, even if unintentionally. Ryan came down late that night, notebook in hand, hesitating as he looked at me. "Father," he began, voice soft, uncertain. I just wanted you to see. I took the notebook gently, flipping through pages filled with imaginary lands, brave heroes, adventures beyond my understanding. And yet, I saw something more. His heart, his creativity, his courage to dream. And suddenly, I felt a deep ache for every time I had dismissed him. Every time I had tried to mold him into what I thought he should be. I thought of my own father, the man whose rules had shaped my childhood. I remembered the fear, the coldness, the lessons that felt like love but were really control. And now I understood I had been repeating his mistakes. I had been trying to protect, but in the process, I had hurt. I spent hours reflecting, alone in the living room, staring at the empty chairs, replaying every harsh word, every tense evening, every moment I had misunderstood them. I realized that change would not come easily. Trust once broken cannot be rebuilt with words alone. It requires patience, consistency, and humility. The first gesture I made was small, almost imperceptible. I asked Emily to show me her sketches, not to critique them, not to judge them, but simply to look, to see. She hesitated, eyes cautious, but slowly she placed the sketchbook in front of me. I nodded, smiled, and praised what I saw. Not for skill, not for perfection, but for the heart she had poured into it. Ryan, encouraged by this small step, began to share his stories. I read them quietly, sometimes commenting, mostly listening. And with each page, I felt the invisible walls between us begin to crumble. Even so, progress was slow. I stumbled often, falling back into old patterns of expectation, frustration, impatience. Each misstep reminded me that rebuilding trust is harder than breaking it. But I was determined. I had glimpsed the love I had been blind to for so long. The real love, not the one disguised as discipline. I also began to reflect on myself, beyond them. My own fears, my own childhood. I understood that my strictness had been born from fear. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of inadequacy. I thought controlling them would shield them from these fears, but in reality, it had only magnified them. And in magnifying them, I had lost sight of what mattered most: their happiness, their voices, their dreams.
I began small, everyday gestures. I asked about their day without judgment. I joined them in small activities, listening more than speaking. I allowed mistakes, real mistakes, without harsh words. And slowly, cautiously, they began to respond. One evening, Emily whispered to me, "Father, thank you for looking at my art. It means a lot." And Ryan said, almost shyly, "Father, can I read you a story?" Those words, simple yet powerful, felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I realized that reconciliation does not happen in grand gestures alone. It happens in patience, in listening, in humility, in being present. It happens in seeing them not as extensions of what I want them to be, but as individuals I love deeply, without condition. I still had a long road ahead. Misunderstandings would occur, tempers would flare, and fear might still linger in the corners of our home. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Hope that love could exist not as control, but as understanding. Hope that our family could heal, grow, and find joy together. I began to see my children not as rebels to be controlled, but as souls to be nurtured. I began to see my own flaws, and in doing so, I began to grow. And in that growth, I understood the greatest lesson of all. Love is not about shaping others to fit your vision. Love is about walking beside them, guiding gently, and allowing them to soar on their own. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting warm light across the living room. I watched Emily move about her sketches, Ryan quietly at his desk, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Calm. It was tentative, fragile, but it was there. The storm that had raged through our home had passed, and what remained was not only silence, but a possibility, a chance to rebuild piece by piece. I approached Emily first. "May I see your newest work?" I asked gently, trying to let go of all the judgment that had built up over the years. She looked at me, hesitation in her eyes, then slowly held out her sketchbook. I took it carefully, flipping through the pages. Each line, each shadow, each stroke spoke not just of skill, but of a young girl's heart and courage to express herself in a world she feared I might never understand. "It's beautiful, Emily," I said, my voice soft, almost trembling. I should have seen this before, should have encouraged you. I'm sorry." Her lips quivered as she looked up at me. "Thank you, Father. I just wanted you to see me, not just what you wanted me to be." I knelt down beside Ryan, whose eyes were cautiously watching me. "And you, my boy, can I read one of your stories?" He handed me the notebook, his hands shaking slightly. I read his words slowly, absorbing the worlds he had built, the heroes he had created, the dreams he had dared to imagine. I realized then how many times I had dismissed him, how many times I had unknowingly stifled his imagination.
"These are wonderful, Ryan," I said, tears threatening to fall. I want to read them all, to understand you. I should have done this sooner." For the first time in what felt like forever, the house was filled with a different energy. Not silence, not tension, but connection. Small smiles, shy glances, a spark of trust that had been missing for years. I understood that reconciliation is not instantaneous. It is built slowly, with patience, presence, and sincere effort. Over the next few weeks, I made it my mission to be present in ways I had never been before. I attended school events, listened to their stories, watched Emily paint, and read Ryan's stories aloud. I encouraged them not just as a father enforcing rules, but as a parent who had learned to see their hearts and respect their choices. One evening, Emily turned to me, a sketchbook tucked under her arm. "Father, I want to submit my work to the art competition again. Will you support me?" I took her hand gently, squeezing it. Of course, Emily. I want to see you shine. I want the world to see the beautiful person I have always known you to be. Ryan smiled, holding up a new story he had written. Father, will you read this one? I nodded, my heart swelling. Yes, Ryan, I will read every word, and I will tell everyone how incredible you are. In that moment, I felt the walls between us dissolve. Not completely. There would always be misunderstandings and challenges, but they no longer loomed as insurmountable barriers. Instead, they were bridges waiting to be crossed with trust, love, and understanding. I reflected on the journey we had taken, the mistakes, the harsh words, the silences that spoke louder than any conversation, and I realized something profound. Being a father is not about controlling, dictating, or enforcing. It is about guiding, listening, nurturing, and sometimes letting go. That night, as I watched Emily fall asleep with her sketches beside her, and Ryan write quietly at his desk, I whispered a promise to myself. I would always try to understand. I would always strive to love in a way that allowed them to breathe, to dream, and to grow. I had learned, finally, that love is not possession. It is freedom. It is trust. It is seeing my children for who they truly are. And in that quiet room, with the soft hum of life around me, I felt a peace I had never known before. The storm had passed, but the lessons it left behind were eternal. I had lost control, but I had gained connection. I had let go of fear, and in doing so, had discovered the true meaning of love. For anyone listening to my story, know this. Mistakes can be corrected. Walls can be torn down. Silence can be replaced with understanding. It is never too late to see the hearts of those we love and to let them know, in word and deed, that they are cherished, not for what they do or what they achieve, but simply for who they are. That is my story, my journey as a father, my journey toward love that is patient, forgiving, and true. And though the path is long and sometimes painful, the reward, the connection, the trust, the shared smiles and laughter is worth every step.